good evening, and thank you for tuning in to the Outpouring podcast show where we pour into you what God has poured into us. I am so excited to have you tuning in with me once again every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I am so delighted, for this is the day that the Lord has made. We shall rejoice and be glad in it. And I'm so excited to have special guests on with me each and every week. And on tonight, I'm so excited to have a great woman of God with me who has so much to talk about today. I tell you, to share with us today. And I just can't wait to hear all that she has to share with us. Before we go into that, let me just introduce who my special guest is. She is a certified life coach. She is the founder of Joyful Life Solutions, as well as Joyful Life Cochlear Implants. She's also a nonprofit organization, and I tell you, as I read even more about this woman, she was also featured on TED Talk, and I tell you, I love it, I love it, I love it. So we just have so much that we're going to get into in this talk tonight. So let me introduce my special guest for the evening, Miss Angela Irwin. How are you doing, Miss Irwin?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
You are so very welcome. Thank you for being on the Outpouring podcast show where we pour into you what God has poured into us, and we're going to pour into our listeners today. How about that? So will you just tell us a little bit about who Miss Angela Irwin is?
Well, that's a great question, I guess. Someone who has evolved in a great way is probably the best thing that I could say. I am someone who wants to help people. I have, and times, felt very terribly about myself, and that's what really drew me into coaching and doing this particular coaching that I'm doing with people. Because if I can have someone feel less, less about themselves, or the way that or less badly about themselves as I did, then that's a win. I would love to put that out. And also at the same time, I think it's so interesting to me as I look back. It's always interesting to look back and see all the pieces falling into place that we can't understand why something might be happening at the time. But when we look back and we go, oh, okay, that's why this happened, or this was why this chain of events happened. So for me, I think that big story is around the thing that I had so much shame around, or the thing about myself that I wish I could have changed more than anything for the majority of my life, is the thing where I have now really found and coming to my full purpose. So that's, in a nutshell, I guess, what I would say.
Yes, and I love it when you say you love to inspire and help others, and that's what we should be doing. Our test, I always tell people on this show that your testimony is for someone else. Your journey is for someone else. It's not for you to keep to yourself, because someone needs to hear your story, because there's some people that are dealing with things that we don't even know they're dealing with. And when we really start talking about what we've been through, the journey that we've been on, and how we've been delivered, how we have gone through, and we have actually come out of different situations, somebody else may have been going through the exact same thing. And we have to share our testimony. And you have a story that I know has your journey, as your journey unfolds, you have a great story to tell about your childhood. And if you can go in a little bit, Ms. Irwin, about your loss of hearing and how that happened. Kind of give us a little history about how that happened. What was going on during that time?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I grew up in a tiny town in South Dakota on a farm. and was born with normal hearing. In kindergarten, let me just preface and say I'm very thankful that in South Dakota, they did hearing screening at the beginning of every school year. Because in kindergarten, my hearing was normal. I learned to speak normally, but in first grade, they detected a mild hearing loss. And that's very unusual. That's very unusual to have happen at that age. Usually with deafness or hearing loss, it's either genetic or you're born with it or you have some sort of an illness with a fever, and I didn't have any of those things. And so my parents were stunned. Of course, no one in my family had hearing loss. And so they said, okay, well, all we have to just monitor it. And so once a year I would go back and, just have it checked. And that very first year, the ear, nose, and throat doctor had told my parents, oh, this isn't a big deal at all. It's not going to progress. It's not going to get any worse, but let's just, once a year, let's check on it. Well, that was very famous last words, because it indeed did get worse every single year. Wow. And over the course of 15 years, I went completely clinically deaf. And, to this day, we don't know why. My parents took me, as I said, growing up in South Dakota, my parents were taking me, I went, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska has a giant hearing health facility in Omaha. And all of the professionals would say the same two things. We don't know why this is happening, and we've never seen this before in a child.
Wow. I can't even imagine that. Oh, my goodness. I'm just trying to follow what you're saying. You were 7 years old when this happened. And so we're going to fast track this. You did not get your hearing back for how long was it after you lost your hearing?
Yeah, so I received my first cochlear implant at the age of 22. In the midst of that, my parents were told, she's not going to graduate from high school. Don't encourage her to go to college because she won't be able to keep up. When you lose your hearing, you start to lose your speech. So I got bullied for how I spoke. By probably middle school, junior high-ish age, but somehow I just kept going with this blind faith that somehow this would all work out, even though there was, completely against all odds. Like there was nothing on the horizon that was going to help. I tried hearing aids every summer. They couldn't help the type of hearing loss that I had. So I will be, perfectly honest, I was internally terrified.
Wow.
I was absolutely terrified if I was even going to have a future. And to have these professionals repeatedly say, we don't know why this is happening, we've never seen this before, how I interpreted this is not at all what they said, but this is how someone interprets hearing this. I took on them saying, holy cow, you are so flawed, you are so broken that none of these people know what to do with you.
Wow.
So that was sort of the basis of my self-worth, if you will. Tongue-in-cheek, I laugh at self-worth, but I've, come, since my coaching education and other education, I've come to understand that how we feel about ourselves is formed in that early childhood. Those very formative ages of around 7 to 9, something that happened to us, told to us, that we experienced, and we take that on as fact. And that's what I took on as fact, is you are so flawed and so broken, nobody knows what to do with you. And that was sort of my guiding underneath it all. I could mask very well confidence in some situations, in some scenarios, but that was really what was at the heart of it. How I felt about myself.
Wow. And thank God for your strength, because, as a young person dealing with something like that, going through embarrassment and, having to get your confidence, build up and keep your self-esteem going at a young age, that's hard for a child to deal with. I know for myself going through grade school and high school from being bullied, and I just felt like I just could not deal with it at some point, but I was able to pick myself up and keep it moving, and I can just imagine what you were going through, because that's a lonely place. That can be a lonely place for you. Now, did you feel like that loneliness started kicking in, the embarrassment with your peers, trying to build your self-esteem with something that you really can't even explain, just you're losing your hearing, and that's something that we all take for granted. We take these things like our hearing in our speech and being able to talk and walk, and these things that we live with every day. Did that loneliness start to really take over at some point?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's so interesting, and I think this is why, I love your show and what you're doing. Even though we have different, experiences, like mine was hearing loss, yours was something else, but we were still both bullied, or we still both felt, different in some way. I think there's such a human connection that can be had in the sharing of the stories. So I love that you're doing this, but absolutely the loneliness set in probably by age, the early teen years, where, I had friends and, but there was definitely a part of myself that I kept very private. I never talked about the hearing loss, even, it was never talked about within my family, with my parents, or they, we just basically 364 days of the year we ignored it, and then the one day of the year I had the hearing test just to see what was going on. Then, we had to sort of address it, but was never any like emotional support around that at all. I just had to push that down and push it down and push it down and push it down. And then when I got the first cochlear implant at the age of 22, and this, I can't even begin to express this life-changing technology. And I know that many people listening to this probably are hearing this term for the first time and are thinking, what's a cochlear implant? Which is, part of the problem. This technology has been around for over 40 years, and it literally is life-changing. It gave me a second chance at life. I wouldn't have been able to have the jobs I had or the experiences I've had. I've lived and worked on 3 continents, traveled the world, like all sorts of, I'm very much a social person. So, not being able to communicate with people was extremely difficult. But I got this second chance at life at the age of 22. I did make it through high school. I did graduate from my undergrad degree in 4 years, even though they said I wouldn't, and, went on to have a 15-year corporate career and all these different things. And I thought I had put all that emotions that I talked about pushing down. I thought, that's all in the past. Until I did the career transition from my corporate job into being a life coach.
Wow.
And that was unexpected, to say. That was very unexpected. I signed up for a year-long, it was a dual life coaching certification plus setting up an online business. Wow. And I'm like, oh, my God, I'm so excited because I loved my corporate career, but my position was I was laid off, basically, and I just turned 40. And I thought, even for the few couple of years prior to that, there's been this, like, and people might know it as different things, like a calling, a whisper, something deep inside that was just saying, there's something else you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
But I never took the time to sort of think about, I was not the person who was always like, oh, my actual dream is to be, a hockey player. I'm just totally making up a random But I never had like the thing that a lot of people do, that my big dream was to do this. I didn't have that. So this, this sort of whisper would keep coming up repeatedly. It was like, there's something else you're supposed to be doing. There's something else you're supposed to be doing. But I had absolutely no idea what.
Yeah.
But so when I turned 40 and I was laid off from my job, or my job was eliminated, I thought, well, this is the time to figure it out. I was living in France already by this point, and I thought, you know what, if you just, get another similar job, which would have been the easier thing to do, then that's going to probably be it for your career. Like, that's going to be it. So I was like, all right, let's take some time and figure this thing out. And that's how I ended up finding my way to life coaching. And then, like I said, I get into this year-long program, and within probably 3 or 4 months, I couldn't even recognize myself from a behavioral level.
Wow.
I now know that I was experiencing depression for the first time in my life, and I was in what I refer to as basically shutdown. And the interesting thing is, it all stems back from losing my hearing. So when I finally, about 6 months or 9 months into it, discovered, thanks to a friend, doing a very gentle nudge and helping me see that I think you might be experiencing depression, finally then finding a great therapist. And what we uncovered was, when my mentor and coach was saying, okay, so we're going to, go out and build this online coaching business, get out there, be visible, promote yourself, go on Facebook Live, do these videos, all this. That little girl, those undealt with emotions of, being bullied when she spoke, about how, because of the sound, the sound of my voice at the time, just was in just absolute fear, fight, flight, or freeze, and I was in absolute freeze at that point. So I had to go back, even though this was decades later, and I thought it was all in the past, and I thought, I'd had this great life thanks to this amazing technology. I had to go back and deal with those emotions.
Yes. And sometimes, as you were speaking, I was kind of like going back as well, having a little flashback as well. Sometimes when we haven't truly dealt with our childhood traumas and the things that we have had to go through, sometimes it takes, we have to get it out some kind of way. And that nudge that you were having, you spoke about whatever it was, you just knew it was something that you needed to be doing. And I quote that back to the Holy Spirit, that the Holy Spirit was leading you to let you know there's more to what you think you're supposed to be doing. We get comfortable in certain aspects of our lives sometimes that we forget, okay, my purpose is not for me, it's for someone else. And so the life coach and all of that, you couldn't really move forward with that because you were still dealing with your childhood issues and you had not really dealt with that fully. And so I get it. I mean, I get it. And, you had to find again that self-acceptance and get your full self-esteem back even after you've gained your hearing back. That's something that, not knowing from 7, that's a long time, from 7 years old to 22 years old. That's a long span of time being without your hearing. And then all of a sudden, like, you get this refreshing and this awakening, this renewal happens, and you're restored and get your restoration of your hearing back. All of that all at one time was probably a bit much for you. But I'm hearing from you a strong warrior, a conqueror, because you were able to conquer it all. And look at you now. You're now sharing what you're doing as a life coach as well as your foundation, your organization to help other women. So I want to ask you, in this time since you've gotten past all of, you're an adult now, you're grown, and you're doing all this, and you're helping others, Can you tell us how has that been? Have you felt joy? Because, we were talking about this, the name of your organization, Joyful Life, cochlear implants and Joyful Life Solutions. There's joy. God gave you joy. He gave you back your joy. So just share with us a little bit about how you're sharing that joy with other women that have experienced what you have experienced.
So you have recapped that so beautifully, and it's so true. That's absolutely my favorite word is just joy. And it has been for years and years and years, stemming from a sermon in Denver, Colorado in the early 2000s. So that's a fun story. But to be able to sort of look back on all these things that have happened, and yes, we all have life is full of ups and downs for all of us. Mm-hmm. But I think for me to look back and think, I went through all of this for a reason so that I can serve other people. Yes. That to me brings joy. And, people might say, that sounds a little bit, that was a lot of pain or a lot of whatever. And yes, it was. But had I not gone through that, and this is true of all of us, right? Like all the life experiences, good, bad, and otherwise, forms who we are. Yeah. Without those things, we would not be the person that we are. And, I know for certain that had I not gone through what I did, losing my hearing and all that experience, I would not be as compassionate or as empathetic. Or in the really funny thing is that I'm a really good listener because I had to be. People, not to generalize too much, but, normally hearing people, they kind of listen and wait to respond. Well, I had to listen and, listen to be able to understand what people were saying to me. And that makes an excellent life coach, So that's sort of a funny ironic piece of it. Excuse me. And so the idea of this is what it was all for just brings a lightness, just brings a clarity of, so helping people on the life coaching aspect, and then in the pandemic, starting the Joyful Life Cochlear Implant Fund to help my fellow cochlear implant recipients be able to afford the ongoing upkeep of their external devices. So without that, we're back to being deaf 100% of the time again. Mm-hmm. And I'm also doing coaching with the cochlear implant recipients. And it's just like, okay, this is what it was all for. And there's just you're absolutely right. It's absolute joy, lightness, to be able to serve in such a way, to be able to be something that's way bigger than myself and give back. And that's, it's not even about me. It's just about helping other people, making it easier for other people. I think one of the things that strikes me the most is being the person I so needed. Yes. I so needed an emotional support during that time, whether I would have never probably admitted that, to be honest, because it was too scary as a child to look at. It was even, it's like, if I just keep moving forward and don't look at it, it's not really happening, right? So, but to be able to be that emotional support that I so desperately needed, I can't imagine anything better.
Oh, my goodness. This is just awesome. And your journey that you had to go through led you to where your purpose is. And sometimes we don't see it. I think you said in the beginning of the show, you knew there was something else that you were supposed to be doing, but you could not really figure out what it was that you needed to be doing. And I tell you, when you really find your purpose, there's nothing like it, because you can be your authentic self. And then at the same time, you're helping somebody else. I've always heard something that says, when you're going through, it's better to help somebody else, and it will take your mind off of what you're dealing with and bring you joy to help somebody else. And so, we have to learn to do that, because that's what inspiration is. That's what, sharing our testimony and our stories are all about. And it's to share with someone else, because we never know who's going through what you're going through. There's nothing new under the heavens, and we all are really, really going through the same things. We're just passing each other by, and we all don't even know that we are actually going through the same types of things sometimes in our lifetime. And if you don't tell somebody your story, share with somebody how you got delivered and how you were able to, struggle. Your struggles got you to where you are, and you were able to be reprogrammed, because that's really what happened with you. You had to be reprogrammed again. It's like losing something and then getting it back again. And so that's a reprogramming yourself to live this life, and then finding out what your purpose is. There's nothing greater than that, than to know what your purpose is. So before we end the show, Ms. Irwin, I tell you, you have really, truly blessed me, and I know that you blessed somebody today. Before we end the show, if you will give us some inspiration, of words of inspiration and encouragement that someone may be listening on this evening. They need, just need some pick-me-up and just something to keep them going. Share with us some inspirational words.
Absolutely. I think you touched on it so lovely. Again, there is just, we never know what someone is going through. And when I was going through that depressive period and having to kind of go back and, well, not kind of, having to fully go back and work through these undealt with emotions. And what I found was when I was more vulnerable with people, the more vulnerable they were with me. And I'm talking, I went back and had conversations with like my childhood best friends, my cousin who was a year older than I was, that was in the same town, and people in my corporate careers that like hugely successful vice presidents. And when I was sharing and being very vulnerable about having to do this reprogramming, I could not believe it. And you were exactly right. So many people were like, oh my gosh, that's totally me. Like I felt like I never fit in, I never belonged, or I doubt myself all the time. And I was absolutely floored that people would open up like this and share. And so I think that's the one thing, is that what you said is so true. We never know what other people are going through, and it's usually more than likely something very similar to what we're also experiencing. But I think on top of that is, I think we're so conditioned at young ages to be pressured to fit in, or that we should be like so-and-so, or be like everybody else, whatever that's supposed to mean, right? And that is so damaging, because what I have found is, this is what sort of done a paradigm shift for me, because I had spent many, many years going, oh, I wish I could be this person, or I wish I had normal hearing, or I wish I looked like that person, or I wish I, as we do. And the truth of it is, we're unique human beings. We're, what makes us different, and I never thought I would probably say this, for the first 40 years of my life, but the thing that makes us different is what makes us special. Yes. It's the thing that really does carve out our unique personalities, which then thereby we are able to deliver unique gifts to the world that no one else can do. Mm-hmm. So the thing that makes us different is what makes us special, and we're not meant to be like anyone else. We are not meant to be like anyone else. God does not, make duplicates. We're not here to be a carbon copy of someone else. And I think that's what I would stress more than anything, especially in this world of social media, where it's just, there's good things that come from it, but there's, the hard part of it is we get into such comparison mode. And then that can keep us stuck, right? Because we think, oh, I don't look like that, or I don't sound like that, or I can't, do a video like that. So I'm just going to stay, small over here in my little square. And that's not what we're here to do. Yeah. That is not what we're here to do. We need to share more of ourselves. We need to be bigger. We need to be bolder, because there's no one else like us. That there's that quote that says, no one can do the same thing you can do in exactly the way that you can do it. Yes. I love that so much. So that would be what I share as parting words.
Awesome. I tell you, those are nuggets that I will remember, and I'm sure someone needed to hear that on this evening. So, Ms. Angela Irwin, will you please share with us any social media contact information, as well as your nonprofit organization, Joyful Life Solutions, so that someone that may know someone, they can get in touch with you about this organization, so they can also get the help that they need, or at least find out how they can move forward in the progress of their life as well.
Absolutely. So thank you so much again for having me. So the nonprofit website, Joyful Life Cochlear Implant Fund, is www.jlcif.org. So it stands for Joyful Life Cochlear Implant Fund.org. It's just abbreviated. And then my website is for coaching and speaking is joyfullifesolutions.com. And you can find my social media and email contacts on each of those websites. I would love to hear from you. So, please reach out.
Awesome. And thank you so once again, Miss Angela Irwin. You have really blessed me tonight, and I thank you so much for just being transparent and just really letting us know about your journey. And I know it's been helpful to somebody today, and I pray that God will continue to bless you and to keep you and continue to do what you're doing. Continue to do what you're doing. Continue to share your story. Continue to be that testimony that somebody else needs to see and hear. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. Well, listeners, I thank you so very much for tuning in to the Outpouring Show. I tell you, I hope that you all have been blessed. I have truly, truly been blessed. And there's a nugget I wanted to take back from my speaker on tonight, or my special guest tonight, because she really spoke tonight. And it says, you are not meant to be someone else. You are special. And I just want to add on to that. You are special all by yourself. And I hope that you all have been blessed. If you would like to be a guest on the Outpouring podcast show, I'm on Facebook at Tamala Coleman, or you can send me an email at tcpraise, that's praise 14@gmail.com. Thank you so much for tuning in every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Everyone have a good day and good night.